Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Alexis Eykel, and I am the Landlord Engagement Specialist at Tacoma Housing Authority. We are here today to learn about what to consider when renting to families with children. This is a part of a fair housing series that the City of Tacoma Fair Housing Team has done for us. So thank you guys so much for doing this. And I'm going to turn it over to Nancy and Russ, our friends at Fair Housing.
My name is Nancy Shattuck, and I am the the Human Rights Manager now, but also in charge of outreach with the City of Tacoma Office of Equity and Human Rights. And to my right,
My name is Russ. I'm the Fair Housing Coordinator with City of Tacoma Office of Equity and Human Rights.
and welcome. We are going to be talking about things to consider, so discrimination factors when you're working with families with children. So before we start, we just want to visit about next month. We'll be talking about accommodations, so specifically looking at disabilities and what that looks like. So make sure you join us for that. And then in October, we will be talking about, there were some updates in the past year related to VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women's Act, and October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we'll be talking about that. So let me make this, there we go. Oh, it's doing that thing again where it's a little wanky, but so pretty much we review this every month just so everybody has the basics about, fair housing is really just the right to be able to choose housing free from unlawful discrimination. And we have federal, state, and local laws that protect all of us in all different housing transactions. So rental, sales, lending, insurance, and it's really just for accessibility. We want to make sure everyone has access to housing. And so these are our protected classes. So on the left, you see our federal protected classes. And then on the right, we see our state of Washington. And then specifically in Tacoma, we have some additional protected classes. And so we are talking about familial status today as a protected class. And I think the main thing to realize is that no protected class is more or less important than another. They're all equally protected. And so, we talk a lot about like race and gender and those protected classes, but familial status is really just as important. And so what are we talking about? The Fair Housing Act protects people who have children. So I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but and we'll make sure that this gets shared out. But the idea is just if there is a person or persons that presents that wants to do some kind of housing transaction, and I know a lot of the folks on the call are landlords, that we're looking at just this applies to everyone who has a child, could have a child, may have a child, that they would be protected. And there is the caveat, if you are a HOPA or a housing for older persons, that if you qualify under that, then this does not apply to you. So that's specifically like senior housing, either 55 plus or 65 plus, but you have to follow certain guidelines to really fall under that caveat. In there?
Correct.
Very good. Okay, so who is protected? So the folks that are protected are families who currently have children under the age of 18, pregnant persons, any person in the process of securing legal custody of a minor child. So whether that be through adoption or foster parents, or persons with written permission from a parent or legal guardian. For example, if someone has, for example, I had a bonus teenager living with my family for a bit, and it was under some extreme circumstances, but her family had given her permission to stay with us. So those are pretty much anytime you see minors involved, they're going to be protected. So some examples of discrimination claims that we may see is someone might contact us if they believe they've been refused to rent. If they've been evicted once a child joins the family, either through birth, adoption, or through that custody process. Steering. So if you require families to live on a certain floor or a certain building or a certain area, if there's restrictive rules, overly restrictive rules that seem targeted towards children. So for example, pools, open spaces, parking lots, hallways, anything like that. And advertising with any of the protected classes, if there's ever any advertising, and in this case, since we're talking about familial status, if that prohibits children, like if you say adults only, and again, not a HOPA, right? Like not a senior living situation, then that could be an example of specific discrimination. Russ is just here to make sure I say everything right. So we have a few more. So these are some more kind of specific examples. So we've seen things like trying to say like one person per bedroom. And so there are, rules and policies that go around or ordinances around, how do you say that? Like how many folks you can have occupancy. Thank you. I'm like, how do you say that? So that's something like check your local ordinances, right? And make sure that you're complying with that. But just having like a blanket, for example, one person per bedroom will not fly. Prioritizing applicants, and again, that whole idea of steering, really, you just need to offer what's available and let the folks choose where they want to be. If you tell a family that no unit is available when there is one available, or again, steering at, putting them into a unit that's larger than what they need, trying to put them on a specific floor area, charging additional rent or security deposit or fees because they have children. And again, that advertising, there should never be a preference for families with or without children, or discouraging folks that may have children in the home. Good. So these are some things that folks may say. So never say we don't rent to families with children, again, unless you're a HOPA. And even there are some kind of exceptions sometimes. Each child must have their own bedroom. Or Russ mentioned like he had a situation where a landlord tried to specify that children of different genders couldn't share a bedroom. And like, that's really not the landlord's prerogative to put those restrictions on a family.
It's always the parents' call.
And so then like this neighborhood has a lot of retirees. You might be happier in an area with more kids, things like that would be considered steering. Adults preferred, families with kids may only rent in buildings near their playground. This last one says you can't store children's toys on the balcony or, in a public area. Do you want to talk more about that?
Excuse me. And you don't have to specifically say can't store children's toys specifically, but by articulating that you can't do something with something that basically children use will be inferred as familial status discrimination. Mm-hmm. So you can't store bikes. You can't have that kiddie pool on your balcony like that. Adults don't use kiddie pools. Kids do.
Even if you are an adult using a kiddie pool.
Yeah, true.
So we have a couple of rules. We're going to talk about things you should do, and hopefully through this, you'll see what you should not be doing. So just do make housing available to families with children. I think the main idea here, Russ and I talk about this a lot, is just do the right thing. And the second bullet there just says families today face enough challenges without being denied a place to call home because they have children. And as I said at the beginning, familial status is a protected class just as much as race or any other protected classes. And so it is unlawful to turn people away just because they have children under the age of 18 in their household. So this whole idea of like expressing a preference is it's just not okay. So just make sure you're making housing available to families with children.
Correct.
Do the right thing. And if you are a HOPA or if you are a senior housing exemption, just make sure you're following all the rules to qualify for that. There are technical requirements through HUD that you need to follow. There's no, just a little bit, like if it's an adults only, like you need to make sure that you're following the rules and the laws around that.
And understand that the two types of housing for older persons, the 55 and over and the 62 and over have different requirements.
Mhm.
And so pay attention to which of the two you're trying to be if you are, and follow those rules
Mhm.
explicitly.
And at the end of the webinar, we offer our contact information. So if you believe you're a HOPA and you do have questions about that, you can always reach out and we can offer technical assistance on that. Rule number 3, do apply same terms and conditions regardless of familial status. So this idea of whatever rule you have, you are applying it to everyone. You can't have terms and conditions for person A or family A and not for family B. You shouldn't have different rental terms for families with children. You shouldn't make the leasing process more cumbersome. Just anything, like everything is, all the steps are the same.
Yes, correct.
Russ says yes. Rule number 4, do be prepared to justify reasonableness of occupancy standards. So you can have reasonable occupancy policies. You can say in this apartment, you should not have more than X number of occupants. However, you just need to make sure that they are correct. And you need to look at the applicable state and local laws that might limit occupancy. You look at square footage, but in general, the housing laws say that, like Russ is like on fire about this.
So in specific, so HUD has this memo that was generated by somebody from years ago. And Mr. Keating. And so he created this memo, and it basically distills down to, okay, an occupancy standard is generally regarded as legit, 2 people per bedroom. But if you want to dissect it a little bit, people don't need to just live in bedrooms. There's spaces in a dwelling that folks can live in. So the housing provider needs to do a little math and measure. And obviously people are going to live in the bathroom and the kitchen, but other dens, living rooms, etc., in a dwelling unit can be occupied by folks. And so if you have a 2-bedroom unit and say no more than 4 people can live here, you need to take the next step, because more than 4 people can live there. Suppose it's a 1,300 square foot 2-bedroom unit, and you take the 300 feet of bathroom and kitchen out of there, and you got 1,000 other feet where people could live. So just be cognizant of that.
Our rule number 5. So again, do be careful. We're talking about occupancy standards. So if there's a change in whoever your tenant is, so if a child joins the household, or if if someone becomes pregnant in the household, just as long as the unit is large enough for the family, if you evict them or refuse to renew their lease or insist that they move to a larger unit, so like what Russ was talking about, like just be cognizant of, it's just not about the bedrooms, it's about all the living spaces.
And historically, Congress decided to put familial status as a protected class because occupancy standards were historically being used to limit the housing for families with children. And so that's why it's such a big thing.
So rule number 6, do tell prospects about all units that fit their needs. So don't steer. And I think we had a session a few months ago about steering. And so the idea is that, let's say I am a housing provider and I have 3 units that are open, and someone contacts us and asks, do we have any open units? Yes, we do. And these are them. And then let them just determine which one they may be interested in. And just, talking about the amenities of the units and just what's available. It's just safest. Rule number 7, do adopt child neutral community rules. So again, you as a housing provider are allowed to have rules, but you just want to make sure that they are legitimate and that they are across the board for all residents, not just children. So for example, saying like no children outside after 7 p.m. or, requiring adult supervision, could be things that could be viewed as treating families with children not equally as other adult households and could open you up to a discrimination claim. So you just want to be sure that you're not ever singling out families with children or children, because it could lead to a claim.
Correct.
So again, talking about advertising, focus on the property, not on the people. So knowing that, in advertising, we talked about advertising in another one of our months. I love that these are kind of coming back around because everything does mesh together. But advertising is what you say, what you write, what you post, whether that be on social media or if, you're putting flyers up or anything like that. Just making sure that you're not trying to make a preference for or against families with children, that you can't have limitations like adults only. And again, knowing that what you say, what if somebody, because I know there's a lot of like emailing now that happens, like folks are reaching out, even through text messages, just be careful about, making sure that you are inclusive and really just talking about the amenities of the property.